Hey everybody, Anchorman here and welcome to the Top Shelf. Thank you guys for stopping by today. We got a great show lined up for you guys today, but first things first, I'd like to give you guys a brief idea of what kind of show this is. My goal of this show is to inform you, the listener, as to the multimedia sphere of existence we live in, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Each month I plan to tackle a different topic or two regarding gaming, comics, and other social issues currently underway. This is my show and anything goes, so keep up because we're not stopping anytime soon. One aspect of gaming that the community has had to suffer through is game delays. The way it used to be is that when a game was delayed, it was a rare occurrence, not because there aren't setbacks in game development, but because games are being announced way too early compared to the older model. Ignoring the obvious games in development hell like The Last Guardian, we've constantly seen games being announced and then released well beyond their initial release plans, like The Division, Homefront: The Revolution, Battlefield Hardline, Deus Ex: Mankind Divided, or more recently with Mighty No. 9. Sometimes for reasons more benign, driven by setbacks, and other times out of greed. The first thing we need to consider is that the dev cycle is about a year longer than it used to be, with the average development time being about 3 years, and it's something developers and more likely publishers have to get used to. Instead of having a studio pump out a new game every other year, it's one extra year of development time that publishers have to spend money on development with no increase in sales. As a result, publishers have to somehow maximize profits, and we've seen some experimentation with pricing models, but we'll talk about that in a later episode sometime. But in the meantime, you see the stress of the publishers wanting a return on these properties, which lead to the pushing of pre-orders and announcing games way too early to gauge hype. And sometimes it's not just the publishers but the developer that leads to delays, and I'd largely say this is more a common occurrence with self-published or Kickstarter games. Sometimes there are development setbacks, and like I mentioned, those are legitimate excuses to delay a title, but it's the perfectionism, the just one more thing mentality of these types of games. We see it in titles like Star Citizen and Mighty No. 9, which are plagued with delays and changes. Like with Star Citizen, it began as a promise of one vision that kept evolving from the base exploration game to, what if we had a campaign-length tutorial? To, what if we had Mark Hamill and Gary Oldman doing voice acting? To, what if we split the game in half so we had the tutorial game separate from the Star Citizen proper? The game never releases because they just keep wanting to add one more thing and the game becomes a money hole. I also personally believe that the most creative minds should almost never become a producer of their own games for this very reason. They need a strong hand behind them to push out the game and make sure it actually releases. But back to the main topic, the rise of pre-orders in the wake of this delay culture. Publishers use pre-orders to gauge interest in a title, and we've seen perfectly good games delayed with little reasoning, such as polishing, like with Battlefield Hardline and Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. Publishers will often announce a game looking to gauge the interest of the consumers by looking at pre-order numbers, and if pre-order numbers are low, they'll push the game back. With Battlefield Hardline, they introduced the game to release fall 2014, only a year after Battlefield 4, and the game got backlash and lackluster pre-order numbers because it was critiqued as being too similar to Battlefield 4. As a result, the game was pushed back with no change in the PS4 beta and the general beta months later. Deus Ex was greeted with disgust to its Augment Your Pre-Order campaign, which resulted in low pre-orders. Lo and behold, the game was then delayed. And publishers aren't all bad guys either, they just have the financial pressures they have to deal with for shareholders. They have to justify the increased development costs in time while seeing less return, and it's a tough job. And the main innovation we've seen this generation has been with sales more than tech. There's been lots of experimentation on how to squeeze more money out of consumers while still appearing fair. But in the meantime, we've seen delays in an effort to stave off costs and increase profits. In some regard, there is no excuse for delays, especially when you announce games so early with no hope of releasing anytime soon. Like The Division was announced in 2013 but didn't release until 2016. It was delayed for a whole slew of reasons, even with the new Mass Effect game, which was announced for a 2016 release but was delayed till 2017. You can announce and release a game in a short window and do well in sales, and that leads me to discuss my favorite topic, Fallout 4. Fallout 4 was announced in June 2015 and then clarified at E3 to be releasing in November of the same year. And day one they sold over 12 million physical copies of the game, and by my estimates now has surpassed well over 20 million units. You could announce and release a game in a short time frame and do very well. That may have worked because it was a well-known title, but other new IPs have done the same thing, like Titanfall, which was announced and released within 1 year of their AE3 debut. So what do we take away from this? I think for you and I, those who don't outright control release dates but instead are subject to the massive hype machine, I have said this before and I urge you to adopt the same mindset. Games don't exist until it has a specific release date. What this means is games are given a release year or a season, or in some cases depending on the publisher, the month, should be treated like CGI TV shows. They don't exist until they are given that hard release date, and then you can get hyped about it. This philosophy weeds out a good chunk of the games that will be delayed, but it won't catch all of them clearly. And when publishers see that we aren't talking about their games unless it has a hard release date, then maybe they'll stop wasting our time. Anyways, guys, that was today's show, and I hope you guys liked it. We'll be back in 2 weeks to do the next episode, and I'll see you guys later. In the meantime, stay tuned for the next episode of Top Shelf.